Adonai El Roy, the Lord, the God who sees me.
We have some characters that are called to some hard roads and going through some tough times with one common theme unifying them all.
But I see you. You understand?
Welcome to Durbania, I'm Durbin, and this is my spoiler talk review for The Chosen Season 1, Episode 8, I Am He. So this is a really interesting episode as we get into this theme that every time I watch it, this theme is so apparent to me, and it's the theme of I see you. And this theme is repeated a few times throughout this episode. So I'm excited to dive into that. What did you think of The Chosen Season 1, Episode 8? Let's talk about it.
This Messiah you speak of, I am He.
One of the things that I love about this episode is simply the title, I Am He. Because what that does is it reveals what Season 1 has been building up to this entire time. That moment where Jesus is talking to the woman at the well, and she says, when the Messiah comes, he'll explain all of this. And he says,
I am He.
So it is building up to that moment where Jesus is publicly saying, I am the Messiah. And of course, it's very important the first person he declares he's the Messiah to, because it shows also the theme of this episode.
But I see you.
And I think that fits, because as we're building up to Jesus declaring that he's the Messiah publicly for the first time, we're building up to him and his disciples hitting the road and traveling for the first time. Kind of symbolic of the fact that the journey is really about to begin. And the road ahead, it's going to be difficult. So the theme throughout this episode is, I see you. Quoting kind of what Nicodemus said here.
When we stumble onto hard roads, he finds us and comforts us.
Or does he call us to them?
Follow me.
Follow you?
And I love how it's first brought up, this whole concept of I see you, through that scene of Nicodemus and his wife Zahara.
And yet, God saw her. And he knew that the path she was forced to take would not be an easy one.
What I love about that is, number one, Eric Avari's performance here. You could just tell he's torn in two. The very last time that we saw Nicodemus was the end of episode 7. Jesus had called Nicodemus to follow him. And Nicodemus is realizing it's going to be a difficult road. And then Jesus says this.
To give up who I am?
It's true. There is a lot you would give up, but what you would gain is far greater and more lasting.
He wants to follow Jesus. Here's what I think is making it so difficult. His life isn't bad. Now, Matthew, he was a tax collector. So everybody's looking at him as a betrayer of his people. And Matthew's like, well, what do I really have? And so he's ready to abandon everything and go after God. And that's one of those amazing things. Here's something that's kind of difficult when you look at where Nicodemus is at. His life isn't bad. He works in ministry. He's got a wonderful wife and children and grandchildren. His life is good. But it seems that Jesus is now calling him to something great. Now, that doesn't mean leave your wife and your children, but it does mean a more difficult road, and maybe something that doesn't make sense to Zahara, that doesn't quite make sense to Nicodemus, but something that he senses in his spirit. This is exactly where I belong. This is exactly what I need to do. And then you have this moment with Zahara.
I love our life.
As do
Take me back to it.
You gotta give her so much grace and mercy, because again, this is a very difficult thing. I really feel like as Nicodemus is talking about Adonai El Roy, and he's talking about Hagar, and how God came to Hagar and said, I see you, the God that sees me. I have a feeling as he's bringing all of that up,
She always loved that Hagar was caught up in something complicated and fraught, but not of her choice.
what he's really trying to do is work up the courage to tell her what he actually wants to do. And then when this moment comes and she says, I love our life, please take me back to it. Again, it's that good versus great, not good versus bad. So it's a good life, just taking a more difficult road. And every single time I go back and I watch this scene, I think what's coming next, when Jesus comes to Eden and he lets Eden know, I see you. I've always wondered, what if Nicodemus had said yes from the beginning? What if, like Simon Peter, he just said, yes, I will follow you? I wonder how Jesus would have come to Zahara to say, I see you, to show her, I see you. We see him go to Eden and take care of something very big in their lives, and it always has made me wonder, would he have done something like that for Zahara? I personally think so. What do you think? Let's talk about that in the comments. But of course, all of this leads to what I think it was one of the most heartbreaking scenes in season 1.
You came so close.
It's heartbreaking. The first time I watched this, I think I cried. No, I did cry a little. I really liked Eric Avari as Nicodemus, and I know because I've read the Bible that no, Nicodemus is not a disciple following Jesus as he travels. So I knew somehow he wasn't going to be following. But what a unique cautionary tale they gave us, right? By adding this little fictional thing here with this character Nicodemus, what they've done is they've showed us how sometimes the pull of the world and the pull of something good can hold us back from something great because it requires that step of faith to step out and follow Jesus. And so what we see is Jesus calls Nicodemus, but the pull of his old life was too strong, and he yielded to the pull of his old life as the disciples walk out the gate, and it just hurts every time I'm watching him cry. Now, let me end this on a positive note. Spoiler alert, when you go into the Gospels, Nicodemus is there. He's there when Jesus dies. He's there helping with Jesus be buried. God is the God of second chances. But I do feel like this is a cautionary tale reminding us that when Jesus calls, it might be difficult. But the path that he calls us to step out on, though it might be hard, it's worth it. It is so worth it. I shared a little bit about this in episode 7, but being called to leave Ohio to California, I felt like I had the choice. And even if I stayed in Ohio, I know God is good and he would have blessed me. But what would I missed out on by not going out to California? Boom. The woman I married, Laura, you've seen her on my channel. She's spectacular. I am so glad I took that step of faith, even if it was scary. Because what I gave up, though it was hard, what I gained was far greater and more lasting. And so little stories like this give me that proper conviction to remind me to spend time with God so that I recognize his voice. So that when that call comes, I know it's him. Because I can hold that voice up to God's word and go, ha, that is God. And then I could take those steps of faith.
I wasn't expecting you here.
People usually aren't.
This is truly one of the best scenes in season 1, 110%. When you read the Bible, you know that Simon is married because it mentions his mother-in-law, but it doesn't go into details about who his wife is. So I love what they did here with the fiction of it, diving into who Simon's wife could have been. But also, would this call on Simon's life been difficult for her? And I love, one, how Jesus comes in to connect with her.
What I see in Simon, you were the first person to notice when no one else did. That connects us.
Number 2, I love how he came up to her and acknowledged
He cannot make sacrifices that are not also yours.
that this is difficult, even if it's exciting.
I know it is not easy to be at home when your husband is out doing all of this.
And then number 3, he says, while I can't make everything about this easier for you, there are some things that I can take care of.
So, I wouldn't ask you to do this without taking care of a few things.
And I love that where he's talking about the worried Simon, because you gotta inject a little bit of humor in there.
Plus, normal Simon is difficult enough. You think I want to travel with a worried Simon?
So I love their boldness to dive into this to show us what it plausibly could have been like, but then you throw some humor in there, as this is a heavy conversation that he's having with Eden, even as he's encouraging her and lifting her up, and then he ends it on that spot of humor. And so that's what I love about this scene. And I love how Jesus comes to her and says, where you are right now, I see you. And then he speaks into her and says, you have a role to play in all of this.
Why?
You will know in time.
I'm gonna be excited to see what The Chosen does with that. What is that role going to be? So there's a lot of things I'm looking forward to and I'm excited about, but I do love this scene where he walks in and he heals her mother.
Leave her.
And I love it because honestly, that's how I always pictured it when I read the Bible anyway. Because in the Bible, it does talk about when he healed Simon's mother-in-law, she immediately got up and began serving them. And the way she does it in here, It's exactly how I pictured it.
Does your friend like goat cheese?
Yes, I love goat cheese.
Bottom line for me, what makes this scene so powerful is you see that he sees her. In other words, she's not forgotten. The first 4 episodes was this build-up with Simon, his debt, his faith, and all of these things are in crisis and jeopardy, and then you see Jesus step in on the scene. And then you get into these second 4 episodes, and Eden's going through a lot. Her mom is sick. Even though she's happy and she's excited for Simon, this is something that is difficult. She's at home while he's out doing all of this. And then Jesus steps in and connects with her.
But I see you. You understand?
He says, you're going to have a role to play in all of this. And then he goes and takes care of a few things for her.
Who are you?
This is Jesus of Nazareth.
She is seen and she is not forgotten.
You picked the wrong person.
I came to Samaria just to meet you. Do you think it's an accident that I'm here in the middle of the day?
I think she's such a great character, and the way they brought her to life in this episode, because it starts with all the ways that she is not seen. Now here's something interesting. Listen to the name of her husband in this scene.
You're wrong about that. I could go with him if I had stayed with Ramin.
Now listen to the name of her husband when Jesus starts listing her husbands.
The first one was named Ramin.
So what's interesting is, to her current husband, she's saying she could go with the other ladies to the well if she had remained with her first husband. But as we learn from Jesus there,
But he wasn't a good man. He hurt you. And it made you question marriage and even the practice of your faith.
it just destroyed her self-worth. So what we see is her current husband treats her as property.
You're my property, Fatina. I don't part lightly with my possessions.
So she's not being seen for who and what she really is. And so what that did is it just kind of broke how she even sees herself, so that when she was with her second husband, whose skin smelled like oranges, she didn't feel worthy of him. And in not feeling worthy of him, she left him. And then you see her again, and she's in the marketplace. And in the marketplace, you have that dude who's utterly ignoring her.
You know, to stop me, you'd have to look at me.
So this is giving us that constant theme of she is not seen. In the beginning, we really see she's not seen for who and what she really is. And now she has kind of a bad view of herself and doesn't see herself as this precious creation of God and who she really is. And now you're seeing how others are rejecting her and not seeing her, which brings us to the well. That now she has to do it in the heat of the day alone. She has to do it completely unseen. Now, one of the ways that I like how they took John chapter 4 is having Jesus intentionally come this way for her. And it's funny because throughout the episode, they talk about how they're going to go on a 6-day journey to Jerusalem. And Jesus is like, well, 3. They're like, what, 3? Are we going to run the whole way? They have these little hints that they're dropping. And Jesus already knows the journey that he's going to take. And he already knows he's going to go through Samaria. And part of that was the intention to come to the woman at the well, because he sees her when nobody else does.
I came to Samaria just to meet you.
All throughout this episode, this is already the plan to come to her, which I think is a great picture of the reality of God, how he sees us. We might feel rejected and unseen and unloved, which might affect our self-worth, so now we don't really see ourselves as God sees us. But God sees us and loves us and finds us precious even at our worst. And so what I love about this scene is you really see Jesus do whatever he can to meet her where she is. How God will move heaven and earth to meet you and I right where we are because he sees us. And that's what's beautiful about this scene. The next thing that I love about this scene is how they open with Jacob's well. So opening back with Jacob's well, you have this line.
You will never strike water. The underground river runs around the mountain, not up it.
Now, what that says is this moment right here is an actual miracle. But that was just physical water to take care of the physical body. So here she is in the heat of the day at this well, carrying these huge, massive, heavy burdens. And she's carrying these heavy burdens, and Jesus says,
And everyone who drinks this water will thirst again. But whoever drinks the water that I give him will never be thirsty again.
He's offering her the living water, those living waters that flow from God's Spirit, that bring healing into our lives, that brings refreshment into our lives, and it wells up as an eternal spring on the inside. So whereas Jacob only had something temporary to offer his sons and his family, Jesus has something permanent and eternal, showing that he is greater than the patriarchs and showing that he is indeed the prophesied Messiah who has arrived.
I am rejected by others.
I know, but not by the Messiah.
Jesus declares to her, out of all in the world, that he is the Messiah first. And he chose her first because he is the shepherd who goes after the lost sheep. She is that lost sheep, unseen by all the rest. So the Messiah forsakes the 99 and he comes for her, the one, which is a theme that comes back up in season 2, episode 1 in a very, very powerful way.
Why me? The shepherd leaves the 99 on the mountain to search for the one that went astray.
But you can actually see that theme begin right here, how he is coming for her, the one, and declaring to her, a woman, number one. She's a Samaritan, which the Jews don't like. He broke down barriers that we don't even comprehend today, but he broke down every barrier to meet her where she is and announce to her he is the Messiah. I love that, and I love how we build to that incredibly powerful moment, and they do such a great job with the emotion of it, because what you really see is she drops her burdens. She drops that water that is temporary. She drops her heavy burdens, accepting the living water, and goes running down that hill.
Oh, he must be the Christ!
Wait! So all of these reasons are why The Chosen is just my favorite show currently. What did you think of The Chosen Season 1, Episode 8, and all that it has built up to? Let's talk about that in the comments. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button to become a Durbanian. Hit that bell by the subscribe button so you're notified for my next movie review, ranking video, theological analysis, or anything else I do here. I'm Durbin. Thanks for checking out Durbania.